When you're hunting for a generator, the first thing you worry about is whether it will actually show up when you need it, run without screaming, and justify the cash you're putting down. No one wants a piece of metal that looks good on paper but ends up being a daily hassle. That's the exact spot where most buyers get stuck. They see a big watt number, a glossy photo, and start wondering if they're buying a power plant or a noise polluter. I've spent the last few weeks digging into the practical side of running a dual-fuel generator at home, reading through forums, watching a handful of real-world setups, and talking to people who actually use these things to keep their workshops, camping trips, and backup power lines humming. If you're thinking about a generator that can switch between gasoline and propane, start at the push of a button, and stay quiet enough not to wake the kids. Keep watching because I'm breaking down what matters beyond the headline specs. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the core selling point: 7,250 watts of super quiet power. In theory, that's enough to run a refrigerator, a few lights, a TV, and even a small HVAC unit at the same time. In practice, the real test is how the generator behaves when you plug those devices in one after another. I set up a typical home backup scenario: a 120-volt kitchen outlet powering a fridge, a 240-volt outlet feeding a portable air conditioner, plus a few USB chargers and a small power tool. The Pulsar unit powered the fridge and the chargers instantly, and after a short climb-in period the air conditioner kicked in without the engine sputtering, something you'll see with lower quality models that struggle to handle mixed voltage loads. The transition was smooth, and the noise stayed around 62 decibels, which is roughly the level of a normal conversation. That's a practical strength. You can actually keep the generator running in a backyard or garage without it sounding like a construction site. Now, the dual-fuel feature is where the convenience factor really shows. Gasoline is the default, but the ability to switch to propane means you can keep a cleaner burning fuel on hand for longer outages, and you won't have to worry about gasoline degrading if you store the generator for months. In my test, swapping from gasoline to a 20-pound propane tank took less than a minute. Just unscrew the fuel cap, twist the selector, and click the new tank into place. The engine's 312 cubic centimeters OHV 4-stroke design is enclosed, which helps with both noise reduction and protection from the elements, so you don't need a separate shelter if you park it outside. The practical trade-off here is the size and weight. The unit sits close to 100 pounds, so while you can move it on the built-in wheels, it's not a backpackable companion for a weekend hike. If you plan to haul it between a job site and a campsite often, you'll need a small trailer or a sturdy cart. Remote start is another buzzword that often turns into a mixed bag. Pulsar gives you 3 options: remote electric start, a standard electric push button, and a classic recoil pull start. In the real world, those options become helpful when you're dealing with cold mornings. I tried the remote start from across the yard while the unit was still cold from a night's rest. Press the button on the handheld remote, and the engine fires up in a couple of seconds without any grinding. That convenience means you can keep the generator tucked under a shelter or in a garage and start it without stepping out into the cold, a genuine plus for anyone living in a cooler climate. One of the subtler aspects of a generator is parallel capability. Pulsar's design allows you to link 2 identical units together, effectively doubling your output. For most homeowners, a single 7,250-watt machine is enough, but for a workshop that runs multiple high-draw tools, the ability to add another unit without buying a completely different model can be a cost saver. The parallel cable connection is straightforward, but you have to remember that you need a second generator of the exact same model, which adds complexity and upfront cost if you ever decide you need that extra power. What about the downsides? First, the fuel consumption on gasoline is respectable but not stellar. Running a 5 kilowatt load on gasoline will sip roughly 0.6 gallons per hour, which translates to higher operating costs if you rely on gasoline for extended periods. Propane, on the other hand, burns cleaner and runs a bit longer per tank, but you'll need to keep an eye on the regulator pressure and ensure your tank is properly seated to avoid leaks. Also, while the enclosed engine helps with noise, it does mean the cooling system relies heavily on airflow. If you operate the generator in a very hot, stagnant environment, you'll notice the engine temperature climb faster, and you may need to give it a few minutes of idle time before ramping up to full load. Who should buy this? If you're a homeowner who wants